I still remember the exact moment my world cracked. It wasn't loud, no screaming, no dramatic fight, just a soft ping from my husband's phone while he was in the shower. I've never been the kind of wife who snoops 15 years together. I trusted him completely. But that night, something felt off. Ethan had been working late, meetings, client dinners. He changed his hairstyle, started wearing a new cologne. I tried to ignore it, until I saw that message pop up on his screen. Reservation confirmed at Arya. She'll love the private booth. I picked up his phone. Typed in our wedding date, his passcode, and there it was. Photos, messages, plans for a future with someone else. Her name was Sienna. I didn't scream. Didn't confront him. Instead, I made a reservation right next to theirs. If he wanted a romantic dinner with her, I'd be there too. Have you ever found out something so painful you didn't even react with anger? Just a quiet, sharp kind of clarity. What would you have done? Tell me in the comments, and if you want to hear what happened next, go ahead and subscribe. My name is Natalie, and this is the night I stopped pretending everything was fine. I used to think I had a pretty solid life. Nothing flashy, just a steady. I had a job, I enjoyed a house that felt like home, and a husband I believed I understood. We'd been together 15 years, built a life that from the outside looked calm and polished. Dinner parties with friends, weekend getaways, birthday cards. Signed with all my love. Ethan, he was a partner at a law firm. Smart, respected. Always busy, always going somewhere, always important. And me, I taught economics at the university. Quiet, predictable work. I liked it. There was a rhythm to my days until that rhythm started to shift. It began slowly. Ethan working later than usual, missing dinner. Saying things like, "Don't wait up," he'd laugh it off. Say it was just deadlines or that one annoying client. And I'd believe him because that's what you do when you love someone. You give them the benefit of the doubt, even when the doubts start stacking up. He started changing how he looked. New suits, expensive ones. He switched cologne, started using moisturizer. He'd never cared about that before. Once I caught him practicing a smile in the mirror, I laughed. He didn't. I remember standing in the kitchen one night, watching him scroll through his phone. His face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't for me, I knew that, but I couldn't admit it. Not yet, there were other signs too. Little things I brushed off. Phone always face down, the way he'd disappear to take calls. His sudden interest in working weekends, I told myself I was overthinking it. That maybe I was being paranoid. That maybe I just missed him and didn't want to sound needy. But the truth was, I was already alone. I just hadn't realized it yet. And then came that text message, the reservation at Arya. The one meant for someone else. That was the moment the fog cleared. I stopped wondering, stopped waiting. And for the first time in years, I chose not to ask for the truth. I chose to go find it myself. I didn't sleep much that night. Ethan lay next to me, breathing softly, peacefully, while I stared at the ceiling wide awake, trying to make sense of the man I thought I knew. I didn't confront him, didn't throw the phone, didn't scream or cry or shake him awake. Some part of me knew that anything he said in that moment would only be lies, and I didn't want to hear any more lies. I wanted something else. I just didn't know what it was yet. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye at the door. "Good luck with your presentation," I said. He smiled, nodded, adjusted his tie, and left. There was no presentation. I knew that now. I called in sick. Told the university I needed a personal day. Then I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I never drank, and I started digging. Turns out Ethan wasn't as careful as he thought. He used the same password for everything: email, calendar, shared cloud account. It didn't take long to find the rest. Dinner at Arya wasn't a one-time thing. There were flight confirmations, weekend bookings, labeled as conferences, even a deposit on an apartment. And there she was. Sienna Blake, 28, marketing manager at his firm. She was married too. To a man named Dylan. I found Dylan's business page through a quick search. Architect. Ran a mid-sized firm downtown. He looked kind normal. Definitely didn't look like the type of man who knew his wife was having an affair. For a second, I almost picked up the phone, almost dialed his number, but I stopped myself. Calling in a panic wouldn't fix anything. It would just give them time to spin a story, to hide what they were doing. No, this needed to land differently. Quiet, clear, undeniable. So I made a plan, and it started with Arya. I called the restaurant. Told them I was looking to reserve a table for Friday night, same night as their dinner. The host was polite, helpful. Yes, they had something available. I asked for a specific spot. Actually, I said, can I be seated near a private booth reserved under the Carter Legal Group? Of course, the host replied. We'll make sure you're close. Step 1 done. Next, I needed to bring Dylan into it, but not directly. I couldn't just tell him the truth. He wouldn't believe me. Or worse, he'd warn her. But I had something Ethan and Sienna didn't: credibility and a university email address. So I wrote to Dylan from my work account, introduced myself as a professor at the university, said I was organizing a guest lecture series on architecture and economics, how design shapes community spending and infrastructure. Told him I'd read about his latest project, flattered him just enough, and asked if he'd be open to meeting over dinner to discuss the opportunity. I suggested a quiet spot. Arya, Friday night. He replied within hours, polite, enthusiastic, said he'd be honored, said he was free that night. And just like that, the stage was set. I closed my laptop and sat still for a long time. The house was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that reminds you just how alone you really are. But I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't sad. What I felt was sharp, cold, clear. 15 years of loyalty, of rearranging my life around his, of being patient, supportive, invisible. He'd erased me slowly, one lie at a time, and now he was going to see what it felt like when the woman he thought would never leave finally stood up. The 3 days leading up to Friday felt like moving through fog. I went to work, answered emails, smiled in the faculty lounge, but inside something had shifted. It was like watching my own life from the outside. Detached, numb Ethan acted like nothing was wrong, still kissed me on the cheek in the mornings, still asked if I needed anything from the store, still talked about work like we were some well-oiled team. Thursday morning over breakfast, he looked up from his coffee and said, I've got a client dinner tomorrow night. Don't wait up, might run late. I just nodded, spreading butter on my toast. Oh, that big merger deal, he blinked. Surprised, then smiled, relieved. Yeah, that one. Just boring shop talk. He thought I believed him. He thought I was still asleep, but I was already gone. Gone in a way he hadn't even noticed yet. That evening, I stood in front of our closet, trying to figure out what to wear. Funny how something as small as a dress can feel like armor. I chose a navy blue sheath dress. Elegant, quiet, sharp. The kind of dress you wear when you want to be seen but not pitied. Pearl earrings Ethan gave me on our 10th anniversary, and red heels. The ones he once said were a bit much. I wore them anyway. Before leaving, I packed a small overnight bag, just the essentials. I didn't plan on sleeping at home that night. Not with him. I drove to the salon, got my hair done, loose waves framing my face. The stylist said I looked calm. I just smiled. If she only knew I arrived at Arya 30 minutes early. The maitre d' recognized my name and gave me a knowing smile. This way. Professor Carter, he said. He'd positioned my table perfectly, just a few steps from the booth. Clear view but discreet. I ordered a martini, waited, watched the entrance like a hawk. Ethan arrived first, 15 minutes early, nervous energy written all over his face. He wore the charcoal suit I helped him pick out last Christmas. He looked younger somehow. Lighter. 10 minutes later, she walked in, Sienna, young, stunning, wearing a red dress that made every head turn. She moved like someone who believed she belonged everywhere, and when Ethan saw her, he lit up. He stood, reached for her hands, kissed her cheek, smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years. That smile, that expression of pure ease and warmth, it used to be mine. Once I didn't flinch, didn't cry, just watched. And that's when Dylan arrived. He tapped me gently on the shoulder. Natalie, Carter. I turned to him. Tall, calm, a little gray at the temples. He looked like a man who believed in order and logic. In people. I stood, smiled, offered my hand. Thank you for meeting me on short notice, I said. He shook it firmly. The pleasure is mine. We sat down. 2 strangers, 2 spouses, 2 ticking clocks. And right behind us, their perfect little lie was about to explode. I tried to focus on the conversation with Dylan. He was kind, engaged, talked with his hands the way passionate people do. especially when he brought up sustainable design and urban green spaces, but I could only catch fragments. Half of my attention was fixed 20 feet away, where my husband was now leaning across the table to pour Sienna a glass of champagne. She laughed at something he whispered, tossed her hair back like she was starring in a perfume ad. And Ethan, he looked completely at peace, like nothing was wrong, like betrayal was just another flavor of Friday night. I smiled through it, sipped my martini, nodded as Dylan spoke about zoning laws. But my eyes kept drifting to Ethan's hand, resting on Sienna's knee beneath the table. My stomach tightened, but I didn't flinch. Not yet, not here. Then Sienna excused herself, bathroom probably. She smoothed her dress and walked past me without noticing. A few minutes later, I excused myself too. Told Dylan I'd be right back. He stood like a gentleman and nodded. I didn't have a plan. But my feet moved on their own, and right there, just outside the hallway to the restrooms, we crossed paths. Sienna stopped cold. Her smile faded. She knew me. She'd seen my face in photos, at Ethan's office Christmas parties, on his desk. Probably you're Ethan's wife, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And you're Dylan's, I replied, tilting my head slightly toward the table where Dylan sat, still waiting, still unaware, color drained from her face. Looking back now, I think I'd been preparing for that moment ever since I saw that message. But what I didn't expect was her reaction. Please, she whispered. Not here? Why not here? I asked. My voice was calm, too calm. The lighting's perfect. The wine's flowing. You seem to be enjoying yourself. She reached for my arm. Victoria? No, I said, brushing her hand away. Try again. My name is Natalie, I can explain. Can you? I asked, voice still soft. Can you explain how you've been lying to your husband, sleeping with mine, smiling in photos, while building a second life? Her eyes welled with tears. It's complicated, it always is, I said, with a tired smile. Love, marriage, promises. They're messy, but betrayal. That's always pretty straightforward behind her. I caught movement. Ethan, he'd noticed us. Stood up halfway frozen. He didn't know whether to walk over or disappear. Sienna's voice shook. What do you want? That question caught me off guard. What did I want? Justice, revenge, a public scene. No, I wanted truth. Cold, plain, no way out. I nodded toward the dining room. Go sit down, I told her. I'll join you both shortly. Then I turned and walked back to Dylan. He smiled as I approached, but it faded when he saw the look on my face. You okay? He asked. Actually, I said, I think now's the time to introduce you to my husband. The color drained from his face as well. Moments later, I led him across the floor. Ethan and Sienna sat side by side like schoolchildren waiting for the principal. Dylan, I said gently, this is Ethan Carter. My husband Dylan looked from Ethan to Sienna, back and forth, a slow dawning realization on his face. And I believe you already know Sienna, I added quietly. Silence, the kind of silence that makes the air feel heavy. Dylan turned to Sienna. How long? He asked, just that 2 words. But it was enough. She didn't answer, she didn't need to. The silence told him everything. Ethan cleared his throat. Natalie, we should talk about this. Absolutely, I interrupted. But not in front of half the restaurant. We'll need privacy. The maître d' noticed the tension, politely approached. Is everything all right with your experience tonight, madam? Actually, I said calmly, we've had a slight change of plans. Could you prepare a private room for the 4 of us? His eyes darted between us. Professional, but clearly uneasy. Of course, right this way. We followed him in silence, 2 couples walking toward the death of 2 marriages. He led us to a small closed-off dining room, set the table for 4, left us with menus we'd never touch. The door clicked shut behind him. We sat, me and Dylan on one side. Ethan and Sienna across. The symbolic divide wasn't lost on anyone. Ethan tried first. How did you find out? Does it matter? I said, I guess not. Dylan still hadn't spoken. He just stared at Sienna like she was someone he no longer recognized. Were you ever going to tell me? He asked, her voice hollow. I don't know, she whispered. That's the problem, I said. Affairs always live in that in-between space. Nothing ever has to be decided, until someone turns on the lights. Ethan looked at me like he didn't recognize me either. You're being very calm about this. What did you expect? I asked. A meltdown. A broken glass to give you the moral high ground. Sorry, I'm done giving you that kind of power. He flinched. I looked at Sienna. You said it was complicated, but you didn't hesitate when you kissed him in public. You didn't look very confused when you fed him from your plate. She said nothing. I reached into my purse, took out a hotel key, laid it on the table. I'm not sleeping in our house tonight. I told Ethan. You'll pack your things and be gone by Monday. We'll figure out the rest later. Ethan looked stricken. You're throwing me out. No, I said, you threw yourself out. I'm just holding the door open. Then I looked at both of them. You wanted dinner? Here it is. All four of us. Let's eat what's left of this lie together. I left the key on the table and stood up. I'll be at my sister's for the weekend, I said quietly. When I return Monday, I expect the house to be yours. No longer, Ethan tried to speak. Natalie, please don't do this. I didn't even look at him. For 15 years, I listened. I waited. I believed every version of your truth. Now you can sit in your silence for once. I turned to Dylan. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. You didn't deserve this. He nodded slowly, still stunned. His hands were clenched in his lap, like he didn't trust them not to shake. Then I looked at Sienna. You have him now, I said. No more hiding. No more sneaking around. Let's see what it's like when the thrill fades and the shame sets in. And then I walked out through the restaurant, past curious eyes and hushed whispers, my heels clicking softly across the marble, straight through the valet line, but I didn't hand over my ticket. Instead, I crossed the street, entered the Grand Meridian Hotel, took the elevator to the 10th floor. Room 1007, the suite was beautiful. City lights stretched out beyond the window like stars spilled across pavement. But I didn't see any of it. I barely made it to the bed before the tears came. Not delicate movie scene tears. Real ones. Ugly ones. The kind that leave your chest hollow and your throat raw. I cried for every anniversary I spent alone, for every silent dinner, every time I let myself believe the excuses. I cried for the version of myself who had waited, who had hoped, for the woman who used to think loyalty was enough. I must have sat like that on the floor against the edge of the bed for over an hour. Eventually the sobs slowed. Not because I ran out of sadness, but because I was empty and somehow clearer. There was a soft knock at the door. I froze. Then cautiously, I looked through the peephole Dylan. He looked just as hollow as I felt. His tie was gone, his sleeves rolled up, his expression lost. I cracked the door. He spoke softly. I'm sorry to bother you. I didn't know where else to go. I paused, then opened it a little wider, gestured him inside. I'm a mess, I said, wiping under my eyes. Join the club, he replied with a tired smile. We didn't say much at first, just sat in the 2 armchairs by the window, staring at the glowing city. You knew, he asked eventually. Before the dinner, I nodded. 3 days ago, I found a message. Then the emails, the photos. He exhaled. She said she was working late. Girls' trips, deadlines. I never once questioned her. I didn't either. I said that's the part that gets you. Not just the betrayal, but how easily they pulled it off. How much they depended on us to never look. He was quiet for a while, then he asked, So, what now? I took a deep breath. I'm not going back. Not after what I saw. What I felt. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Over and over again, Dylan nodded slowly. I don't know what I'll do. We don't have kids. That makes it easier, I guess. But 7 years. That's still a lifetime. I know, I whispered. I reached across and placed my hand over his. Not romantic. Not yet. Just human. 2 people grasping for something solid in the wreckage. We stayed like that, saying very little, and eventually he stood. I should probably get a room, he said. I'll see if they have anything downstairs. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Thank you, he said softly, for not pretending everything was okay, for putting the truth on the table. I nodded. I didn't feel brave, just tired of pretending. He gave me a small, grateful smile, and then he was gone. I closed the door, locked it, sat back on the bed, and stared at the keycard Ethan would never use. It was over and somehow just beginning. The morning after felt strange. I'd expected to wake up feeling empty again, but what I felt instead was something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. There was no longer a question in my mind. No more what ifs, no more hoping he'd come clean. He hadn't. He never would. Around 9, someone knocked again. For a second, I thought Ethan, but when I opened the door, it was Dylan. He had 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "You said you were more of a tea person," he said with a shy smile. "But I figured today coffee might be okay." I smiled. Stepped aside. Coffee's perfect. We sat again by the window, the city below slowly waking up. Neither of us said much at first. We didn't need to. There was something comforting about not having to fill the silence. Finally, he spoke. "She's been calling me all night. Texts, missed calls. I didn't answer any of them. You don't owe her anything," I said softly. He nodded. "I know, I just keep thinking about how easily she smiled last night. How natural she looked sitting next to your husband, like they'd done it a dozen times before." "They had," I said, "and they would have kept doing it." Until someone stopped pretending. Dylan looked over at me. "You stopped pretending I had to," I said. "For 15 years, I played the part." Smiling, supporting. Looking the other way, he nodded. We both did. We sat there, 2 people in the aftermath of something that had quietly rotted for far too long. Around noon, we said goodbye, exchanged numbers. Not for anything dramatic, just to check in, to be human for one another when everything else felt raw. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, phone calls, awkward conversations with friends who had no idea. Some of them really didn't. Some of them probably did and said nothing. Ethan didn't go quietly. He tried to explain, to twist the narrative. Said I was overreacting to one mistake. I reminded him it wasn't one, it was hundreds. 1,000 tiny betrayals layered like bricks until the foundation gave out. As for Sienna, she left town within a month. Rumors swirled. Some said she resigned. Others said she needed space. I didn't care. Ethan tried to keep the relationship going, but from what I heard, it didn't last long. Because without the lies and secrecy, they had nothing real to hold on to. Meanwhile, Dylan and I kept in touch. At first, it was coffee. Then walks. Then long, quiet dinners that didn't need fixing or pretending. He never rushed me. Never expected anything. He just showed up, listened. Let the silence speak when words felt too small. One evening, about 6 months after that night at Arya, we walked along the riverfront. The sun was setting, gold light bouncing off the water. "I never properly thanked you," Dylan said. "For what?" "For being brave, for not staying silent. If you hadn't exposed them, I'd still be living in a lie. I didn't know I was in." I thought about that for a moment. I didn't feel brave. I said I just couldn't keep pretending. "Sometimes that is brave," he said. We paused by a bench, watched a boat drift past. Then he asked, "Are you happy, Natalie?" I didn't answer right away. "Not always," I said honestly. "Some days, I still miss the version of my life I thought I had. The home, the history, the certainty." He nodded. "I get that." But I continued most days. "I'm just grateful for the truth, for the quiet, for the chance to start over on something real this time." He reached for my hand, held it gently. Nothing urgent, just steady. That night, lying in bed alone, I thought about how far I'd come. A year ago, I was making dinner for a man who couldn't meet my eyes. Now I was rebuilding something new, brick by brick, but this time, the foundation was mine. And then life being life found a way to bring everything full circle. I ran into Ethan at a colleague's retirement party. He looked tired. Older, a little lost. He approached me by the drinks table. "Natalie," he said, "you look good." "Thanks." He hesitated, then said I never properly apologized. I was too busy trying to save face. And now I realize what I threw away. And I'm sorry. Truly, I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, I felt nothing sharp. No anger, no longing. Just peace. "I hope you find what you're looking for." "Ethan," I said. "You seem to have found yours," he replied. Glancing across the room, Dylan was there, laughing with a few faculty members, confident, Present real, I'm not sure what I found, I said, but I know it's honest, and that's enough. We parted ways. No more guilt. No more weight. Later that night, Dylan and I walked under a canopy of stars. He looked at me and said, "I'm glad you reserved that table next to theirs." I smiled. So am I. Because sometimes, the worst night of your life isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of the one you were always meant to live. What did you think of Natalie's story? Have you ever chosen silence when you should have chosen truth? Let me know in the comments. And if you stood with Natalie, hit like, share this with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe to EN True Tales. For more stories like this, one voice at a time, one truth at a time.